Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I the Dragon, Cool and Beautiful Rabbit Hole Lore and Fray, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. I have a couple of minutes before work, so I thought I would make a quick video talking about a specific topic that I have been seeing people talk about, but I really need to address this. This is very, very important. Gotham Knights is a complete and utter failure. People are complaining about frame rate problems, they're complaining about like compatibility issues, they're complaining about like the change of gameplay, story and lore changes. They're complaining about the writing, the general gameplay loop. Like, I haven't really been paying attention to like a lot of the problems the game has, but there is one very, very clear, definitive reason for the very strong backlash towards this particular release, and that is the fact that it is not as good as the Arkham games. That is like the undeniable fact at this point. Like, everyone's acknowledging it, everybody's talking about it. Like, whatever other problems the game has, I think they all come second fiddle to this very, very specific thing, is that it's not as good as the Arkham games. And there are a couple of things to take away from this. For one thing, games have stopped getting better, and the public has begun to acknowledge that. Like 10 years ago, you would have seen people like say that, oh, at least, 10 years ago was 2012. Oh, 10 years ago we were playing Super Mario with Sunshine. Look how much games have improved and evolved since then. Look at these graphics. But now in 2022, like the games made today are worse than the games made 10 years ago, right? Like Arkham City came out 10 years ago, and to my knowledge that game looks and plays better than Gotham Knights. Of course, I haven't like done gameplay comparisons or anything like that, but I guarantee you that Gotham Arkham City is better than Gotham Knights. But secondly, is the brand, the DC brand, the Detective Comics brand, right? Batman. This. I think we're reaching the point where people don't want these brands to be milked indefinitely. We really have reached the point where the creative teams involved, like DC Comics, Detective Comics, is unable to really innovate and do anything new with their brands. They have essentially run out of every possible storyline they can come up with. They can't create new characters, they can't introduce new ideas, they can't really evolve like the basic idea what Batman is. Like the brand is essentially over. It's been going for so long, and it just had no real evolution or change to it that people have gotten bored of it. They gotten sick of it. And now with like the cape shit movie fad like dying off, now that like we have a couple of like Batman games, we're kind of at that point where even like the novelty of having like, oh, it's a AAA game featuring Batman, even that's died down, right? Like even Arkham Knight kind of bungled this, where it really does feel like Arkham Knight in a lot of ways is not a Batman game. There isn't a lot of focus on the actual Batman characters. The setting is boring as fuck. Like it's unbelievably terrible just what they did with that release, right? Like, not that anybody wants to admit it. And that's the thing. It was a very long, slow decline to this point where people are beginning to acknowledge that games aren't good anymore, right? When Spider-Man PS4 came out, like people were hyping that up as as the next big thing when like it was just a lesser Arkham essentially. It was a mediocre rehash of a game that was already mediocre to begin with, right? And then we got the Miles Morales DLC, which Sony tried to sell as a actual an actual new game, right? Like at full price, I believe it was like what, like 4 or 5 hours long, something like that. Like people tried pretending that was a big deal, right? Like people, again, much like God of War 2018, it was like one of the most hyped PlayStation exclusives of that time period. But now, it's interesting to see how games like that, games like God of War, games like Uncharted, how those games are getting ported to PC with no real hype or enthusiasm at all. I myself do not own them, and I honestly expect that I'll never own them because nothing about these games are appealing to me at all. The only reason I bought into the Arkham hype to begin with is because I was told by like gamers, the gaming community, that like, oh, Arkham Asylum, it has some of the best combat in any game ever, which is a load of crap. Even back then, I was like I was playing stuff like Bayonetta. I was playing like, I grew up playing Beautiful Joe. I grew up playing stuff like that. That was way better than like any of the Arkham games. I would play like God Hand soon after Arkham. That was way better. Like there are so many games with better hand-to-hand combat. Like Arkham doesn't really stand out. The only reason Arkham was relevant was because of the license. But because of the license and because of like the stigma surrounding it, we're kind of at the point where creators, gamers, just game developers just can't really do anything new with it because it's already all been done. Like they can't use any of the lesser known Batman villains because nobody knows who they are, right? It's why they had to keep resorting to using Joker over and over and over again, even after the character was dead, right? Like the character literally was killed off in the second game and still somehow has a big role in the third. Like that's just how creatively bankrupt these people are. Like they couldn't do anything with the they essentially ran out of the well-known characters to use, and now they're going to have to like recycle the same concepts and ideas over and over and over again. If they use the lesser known characters, it'll become apparent just how poorly fleshed out like the DC Comics universe actually is, the Detective Comics universe actually is. That it's just it's just like it's just a mishmash of a bunch of concepts and ideas that don't really fit well together. Like people have talked about this before, how it doesn't really make sense that Batman and Justice League can exist in the same continuity. Because like, standalone Batman media like presents Batman as being like, going up against like street level thugs and like having a hard time with supervillains that like Superman could beat with ease, right? But like Justice League portrays him as like one of the most competent, like all encompassing members of the team, and it's purely because like the character is so popular. It doesn't really make any sense in the context of like the verse. You know what I mean? It's just like shilling for a character that realistically wouldn't be able to compete with essentially any other member of the Justice League realistically. And yet he's depicted as being like one of the most competent members, one of the most capable, like the founding members of the Justice League. Like, no, fuck that. But Batman sucks shit. Like, okay, Batman is just the okay. I've like talked about this several times already, like how I detest Batman. Honestly, all superheroes, but I guess Batman is like the poster boy for this kind of thing because I really do think that like in the past decade it was Batman that was like hyped up as like the cool, trendy superhero to be a fan of. I suppose like back in like the 70s it was probably Superman, but now it's like after the film started becoming popular, it like kind of shifted to Batman, like as like the definitive like dark, mature comic book character. And I just hate that because there's nothing mature about like what Batman tries to do, like as a creative property. You can, okay, like it's just stupid. It's just not entertaining. The characters aren't fun. The art isn't good. Honestly, even like iconic Batman media, I think stuff like '89 Batman and like the cartoon. Like I think a lot of that is just overhyped by people who like grew up watching it. Kind of like how people in my generation kind of gravitate towards The Lion King and stuff like that. Like it's not that like The Lion King is so good. It's basically just a ripoff of Hamlet. But like it's just something that like our generation grew up with and really has like this collective sort of relationship with, so it's like relatable to other people. I don't know how much I would consider Batman to be like a genuinely good brand. I really strongly don't think so. There's nothing entertaining really about the character or the idea or like the storylines or anything. I just hate Batman. So I hope that with the downfall of the MCU, with the films becoming increasingly unpopular, with people starting to get bored of like these repetitive storylines and like just comic books style, just the repetitive nature of comic books, like I think that's going to bleed over into video games because I think in a lot of ways Gotham Knights was slated to fail to begin with. People are making excuses for it now, saying it's because of like the gameplay changes and stuff like that. But I do think it's like primarily people just being tired of the brand. Like I think this is why the recent movie kind of came out and was kind of forgotten very quickly. Is that like we don't need more Batman movies. You know, like I don't even think we needed like the Nolan trilogy, honestly. Like I feel like the brand just kind of fell off a cliff and it never really recovered after the 89 one, right? Like I just don't see what the point is to keep the brand going indefinitely other than like to print money from like people who are nostalgic for like what Batman used to stand for. He didn't it's just it's ridiculous. I hate it. Honestly, like again, I've been like a big hater of the Arkham game since City. I played it on Wii U. It was like honestly, that was one of the games I was looking forward to playing on Wii U because I was told it was like one of the best games ever made when it first came out. And then when I played it, when I compared it to like stuff that like people said was terrible, stuff like New Super Mario Bros. U, stuff like Nintendo Land, stuff like The Wonderful 101, I kind of realized, especially The Wonderful 101, I kind of realized that like the masses, so to speak, were like completely full of shit. And so like I kind of moved on, kind of became like a hardcore Nintendo hardliner, and here we are today, where like I almost exclusively play on Nintendo hardware. Uh, I had no intention of ever checking out Gotham Knights. To this day, I still have never finished Arkham Knight, which is still one of the worst superhero games ever made. I don't know why more people don't make fun of that release. I I feel as if I'm optimistic that these superhero style games like kind of fall by the wayside. I hope the Wonder Woman game fails. I hope like whatever Superman release fails. I'm sure. I think the Guardian of the Galaxy's game failed, which really made me happy because fuck Guardians of the Galaxy. Nobody knows who they are. I don't know who the characters are. I don't care. Um, I hope that like more people start realizing that like there's a whole wide world of great video games outside of like generic Batman inspired beat 'em ups. You know what I mean? Like there are so many better games than the Batman Arkham games, and I hope that someday people will go out and discover them.